Hi, this is Rabbi Neil Katz, and welcome to the second episode of 3 minutes, 60 seconds of Torah. This week we are looking at the portion of Noach, or Noah, and we all know him. He's famous. He built an ark, and he brought on the animals. But there's an interesting phrase in this week's Torah portion which says that Noah was ish tzaddik bedorotav. He was a righteous man in his generation. When the rabbis of old read this text, they had at least a qualifier. We knew why Noah was chosen to repopulate humanity. Remember, the generation of Noah was so bad that God had to destroy all of humanity with the flood and repopulate it with the one righteous person of the day. So, whenever a text appears in the Torah that may seem superfluous, may seem like an extra piece of text that we don't need, it sends up a red flag. It would have been enough to say that Noah was a righteous man, period. That's all we need to know. But then it adds that qualifier, he was a righteous man in his generation, bedorotav. And so the rabbis then have this conversation about what does it mean to be righteous in his generation? Why that qualifier? What can we learn from that? And there's two rabbis. They take opposite points of view. And the first one to go is Rabbi Judah, or Rabbi Yehuda. And he's not particularly kind to Noah. What he says is, look, there are other people in the biblical text, Moses, the prophet Samuel. They are righteous too, but they are supremely righteous people. And we can't consider Noah to be righteous on the level of Moses or Samuel. Why? Because the text added that phrase, bedorotav, in his generation. Who was the generation of Noah? They were so terrible, so filled with violence, and so filled with depravity that again, God decided to destroy all of humanity and repopulate it with the one righteous person. More on that next week. And so, how difficult, Rabbi Judah asks, how difficult is it to be righteous in that generation? I often tell my students that the world was filled with F students, failing students, and that Noah, according to Rabbi Judah, was an F+. He was just slightly better than the dreck around him. How hard was that? Okay, we can call him righteous in that generation, but don't compare him to the greatness of Moses or Samuel. Along comes Rabbi Nehemiah, and he says the opposite. That qualifier, bedorotav, in his generation, actually tells us a great deal about Noah. He was surrounded by the worst generation of humanity. Now, while Rabbi Judah said he was just slightly better, Rabbi Nehemiah says, no, to be righteous in that generation, bedorotav, required an extra level of holiness and righteousness. It's actually a beautiful idea. In a world filled with terrible people, to be righteous in that generation, you're not just an F+. When everybody else around you is an F, you're actually an A. Noah had within him some level of righteousness, some moral compass for holiness that defied his generation. And for that reason, in his generation, he was considered righteous, despite the horrible people and the horrible role models around him. He knew how to be righteous and holy. We surround ourselves with friends and with family, and are we just slightly better than those around us? Or do we want to be righteous for all time? Those are two very different levels of righteousness, but a lot of it depends on the context when we live. So that phrase, bedorotav, sets off a red flag that, again, it's not a legal discussion. They don't even resolve the question. They simply show us two different dynamics of humanity, that sometimes we're slightly better than those surround us, and sometimes we are magnificently better. And I happen to personally agree with Rabbi Nehemiah that Noah was magnificently better because without any modeling of righteousness around him, he was still righteous in his generation. I'll be back next week with another episode of 3 minutes, 60 seconds. Feel free to share this video around. Now go out and be Torah.